Cam Newton just went full scorched earth on the Atlanta Falcons ownership. And this wasn't some casual critique. This wasn't a former player nitpicking play calls or questioning scheme. What we just witnessed was one of the most raw, unapologetic, and devastating takedowns of an NFL franchise in recent memory. Kevin simply pushed back on the hiring of Kevin Stefanski. He framed it as a betrayal of the culture of the city of Atlanta and of the future of young black quarterbacks across the league. Let's be clear about the optics. The Atlanta Falcons, a franchise based in one of the blackest cities in America, playing in what many consider the blackest division in the NFL, just handed control of their team to a coach who was run out of Cleveland. And Cam Newton is asking the question everyone in Atlanta is thinking, but few are willing to say out loud. We saw what you did with Shedeur, and it was unacceptable. Newton isn't just venting. He's calling out what he believes is a pattern. In his eyes, Stefanski has consistently failed to connect with, develop, and truly respect quarterbacks who come from an authentic black cultural background. And now, that same coach is landing in the NFC South, what Cam calls the HBCU of NFL football. That's not a fit. That's a collision. Cam sees this as culture pushing back, and he's standing at the front of the line. This isn't about playbooks or analytics. It's about identity. It's about respect. And it's about protecting a roster full of young talent from being swallowed by a system that could stunt or outright ruin their growth. So let's break down why Superman is this fired up. How are you going to handle that? We saw what you did with Shedeur, and it was unacceptable. Ain't no blacker division than the NFC South. You got Atlanta. You got Carolina. You got New Orleans. That's the blackest division in football. Shedeur is a member of the culture, and you just landed in the most cultural of cultures. To understand the rage behind Cam's words, you have to understand the ground this team stands on. Atlanta isn't just a market. It's a symbol, a cultural capital, the Hollywood of the South, a city built on swagger, creativity, influence, and an unbreakable bond between its teams and its people. The NFC South, Atlanta, New Orleans, Carolina, is different. As Cam said, there is no blacker division in football. Identity matters here. Culture matters here. And into that environment, Falcons ownership dropped Kevin Stefanski. The disconnect is glaring. You're taking a coach whose time in Cleveland was defined by cultural friction and questionable relationships with the very players who embodied the league's future and planting him right in the heart of it. It feels tone-deaf, like ownership studied spreadsheets instead of the city, like they ignored the soul of the franchise in favor of a resume. Cam Newton is making sure nobody misses the message. This wasn't just a football decision. It was a cultural one and a careless one. Bring Stefanski's rigid demeanor, his analytics-first mindset, and his reputation for overlooking human instinct into Atlanta, and you're inviting tension before the first snap is even taken. But Kim didn't stop there. He brought receipts, and the biggest one has a name, Shedeur Sanders. This is the backbone of his argument. The smoking gun. In Cleveland, Cam believes Stefanski was handed a golden opportunity, a young, gifted quarterback with charisma, pedigree, and star power written all over him. A potential face of the league. The prince of a draft. And what happened? Did Stefanski build around him? Protect him? Empower him? According to Cam, no. He believes Shedeur was set up to fail. And that's why this hire hits different. Cam didn't mince words, and he isn't backing down. Cam went even further. He flat out accused Kevin Stefanski of stripping Shedeur of his natural gifts. Not because of football, but because of what Shedeur represents. Hood culture. Authentic black confidence. The flash. The swagger. The unapologetic self-belief. According to Cam, that was the real issue. Shedeur didn't fail because he lacked talent or preparation. He failed because Stefanski couldn't or wouldn't understand him. Instead of embracing what made Shedeur special, Stefanski tried to mute it. He tried to sand him down, turn a dynamic creator into a programmable machine, a square peg forced into a round hole. And when that experiment predictably collapsed, Shedeur was left holding the blame. Cam looks at that Cleveland disaster and asks a question that should scare every Falcons fan. If that's how he treated Deion Sanders' son, what do you think he's going to do to your guys? If Stefanski couldn't manage the most media-trained, spotlight-ready rookie the league has ever seen, how is he supposed to lead a locker room full of young stars who need guidance, trust, and freedom, not suppression? The NFC South is almost the HBCU division of the NFL. Oh, very much. And that brings us to the real issue Cam was circling: philosophy. Creators versus robots. Kevin Stefanski coaches robots. His offense is Shanahan-light, mechanical, rigid, pre-programmed. The quarterback turns his back to the defense, sells the fake, snaps around, and throws to a spot. No feel, no instinct, no creativity, just obedience. That system worked for Kirk Cousins in Minnesota because Kirk Cousins is a robot. He follows instructions flawlessly. But look at the quarterbacks Stefanski struggles with: Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield, Shedeur Sanders. These aren't processors. These are creators. These are improvisers. Guys who thrive when the play breaks down. Guys who see the field, trust their eyes, and make something out of nothing. When you put a creator in a robot system, you don't elevate them, you break them. You kill their confidence. You teach them to doubt their instincts. And now Atlanta has Michael Penn Jr. Is Penn a robot? Absolutely not. He's a gunslinger. He has an unconventional delivery. He plays with flair and confidence. By hiring Stefanski, the Falcons are effectively telling Michael Penn, stop being you. Be Kirk Cousins. That's not development. That's destruction. We just watched this exact movie in Cleveland with Shedeur. Why would anyone believe the ending will be different in Atlanta? You can't ask a jazz musician to play classical music and expect brilliance or happiness. Cam Newton understands this because he was a creator. He knows coaches like Stefanski don't see creativity as an asset. They see it as a threat to their system. Now, defenders of the hire will say, maybe Shedeur was the problem. Maybe he was just a bad fit. Maybe the offensive line failed him. Cam anticipated that excuse and demolished it with one stat. During Kevin Stefanski's tenure in Cleveland, he cycled through 13 different quarterbacks. Let that sink in. 13. That's not bad luck. That's a systemic failure. Veterans like Joe Flacco. Rookies like Dorian Thompson-Robinson. High-ceiling stars like Deshaun Watson. Scrappy competitors like Baker Mayfield. Different styles. Different skill sets. Same result. When you burn through 13 quarterbacks and fail to develop one consistent franchise player, the issue isn't the ingredients. It's the chef. Can't put it bluntly, who actually got better? Who could Stefanski point to and say, I made that guy? The answer is silence. There's no success story, only a graveyard of shattered quarterback confidence. Baker Mayfield left Cleveland and immediately looked like a Pro Bowler in Tampa. Odell Beckham Jr. escaped and won a Super Bowl in Los Angeles. Everyone seems to thrive the moment they leave Stefanski's system. Yet the Falcons looked at that resume, years of regression, stalled careers, and wasted talent, and said, yes, that's our guy. It's logic that borders on delusion. How are you going to handle it? We saw what you did with Shedeur. And that brings us to the man signing the checks. Arthur Blank. Why did he make this hire? So the real question becomes this. Why did the owner of the Atlanta Falcons sign off on a hire that feels so misaligned with his city and his roster? Cam Newton never said Arthur Blank's name outright, but the target was obvious. The implication is clear. Ownership is disconnected. Arthur Blank has been chasing a ghost ever since Kyle Shanahan walked out the door. He saw the lightning in a bottle that was the 2016 Falcons offense, and for nearly a decade, he's been obsessed with recreating it. First, he hired Arthur Smith, same offensive tree, same promise. That failed. Now he's hiring Kevin Stefanski, another disciple of the same philosophy. Same idea, same system, same hope. Different results? Not yet, and that's the definition of insanity. Blank is a blind spot. He's fixated on the offensive genius archetype, the stoic play-calling savant, the quiet schematic wizard. And in the process, he consistently undervalues the leader of men. He undervalues cultural awareness. He undervalues connection to the locker room, to the city, to the people wearing the logo. By hiring Stefanski, Blank is revealing how he sees this team, not as individuals, but as interchangeable parts, cogs in a machine. His belief seems to be that if he just finds the right operator, the system will finally hum. But football isn't mechanical. It's human. It's emotional. It's personal. And by ignoring that reality, by ignoring the cultural fabric of his roster, Arthur Blank may be setting this franchise back another 5 years. And this is where the fear really kicks in for Falcons fans. This isn't about relitigating the past. It's about protecting the future. Atlanta has one of the most exciting young cores in the NFL. Michael Penn Jr. at quarterback, Bijan Robinson in the backfield, Kyle Pitts at tight end, Drake London on the outside. Young, gifted, predominantly black. Athletes who play with flair, confidence, and creativity. They are exactly the type of prodigies Cam Newton is worried about. Look at Stefanski's track record in Cleveland. Nick Chubb disappeared in crucial moments. Odell Beckham Jr. was misused and marginalized. The team's best players often felt like afterthoughts instead of centerpieces. If Stefanski couldn't figure out how to use Shedeur Sanders, how is he supposed to unlock Michael Penn Jr.? If he couldn't maximize Cleveland's talent, why should anyone believe he'll suddenly unleash Kyle Pitts? It feels like hiring a tutor who failed every math exam to teach your kid advanced calculus. Like handing the keys to a Ferrari to someone who's crashed every sedan they've ever driven. Cam sees these young Falcons not as roster pieces, but as futures, as faces of the league. And he sees them walking into a trap, a system with a proven history of stifling this exact kind of talent. The thing about Kevin Stefanski is this: who has actually gotten better? Who can you point to and say, I coached him, I made his career? And that's when Cam widened the lens. This wasn't just an attack on the Falcons. It was an indictment of the NFL's entire hiring cycle. Why does a coach who just failed get another head coaching job immediately? Why does Kevin Stefanski get to fail upward? Because the league protects familiarity. It protects the good old boys network, the retread fraternity. The NFL would rather recycle a known name than take a real risk on new, diverse leadership. Stefanski was fired for losing. He was fired for locker room erosion. He was fired for aggression. In almost any other industry, that resume doesn't earn you a promotion, it earns you a demotion. You regroup, you coordinate, you prove you learned something. But not in the NFL. If you look the part, if you fit the offensive guru mold, you get endless chances. Cam's frustration comes from knowing the contrast. Black coaches, leaders like Eric Bieniemy, don't get that grace. They don't get to stumble. They don't get a second chance after failure. They have to be flawless just to stay in the conversation. Stefanski can be mediocre. He can even be disastrous. And he still gets handed another franchise. That double standard is exhausting, and Cam Newton is done pretending not to see it. Because when Cam talks about Stefanski's failures, especially with black quarterbacks, he's pointing at something bigger. A pattern, a bias, a system that evaluates leadership, creativity, and confidence differently depending on who's wearing the headset and who's under center. And that's the elephant in the room. Cam didn't whisper it. He put a spotlight on it. Cam Newton argues that the problem with Kevin Stefanski as the Falcons coach goes beyond football strategy. It's about relatability, trust, and understanding players, especially black quarterbacks. Cam believes Stefanski misreads confidence as arrogance and fails to nurture the unique qualities of players like Shedeur Sanders. This is a recurring issue in the NFL, where cerebral coaches clash with dynamic playmakers. Cam warns that Stefanski's rigid approach will stifle the potential of the Falcons' young stars, like Michael Penn Jr. and Bijan Robinson. The hire is even more baffling given the Falcons' history. They once had Raheem Morris, a respected leader who understood the culture, but chose to let him go in favor of a schemer like Arthur Smith. Now, hiring Stefanski, whose recent track record is worse than the fired Arthur Smith, signals a deeper issue. The Falcons prioritize systems over leadership. This move doesn't just ignore cultural fit, it defies logic. Stefanski's poor coaching record and failure to maximize talent in Cleveland should raise red flags. Fans are frustrated, and the city's apathy is growing. Cam warns that the Falcons are not just risking their roster, they're losing the city. The hire alienates the fan base and creates a sense of disengagement, which can ultimately harm ticket and merchandise sales. Cam's message is clear. The Falcons' leadership is out of touch, and they're on the verge of losing the very community that supports them.